Hey everybody, welcome to another carving video. So in this one, I'm going to be carving an A-frame cabin scene in shallow relief. It's carved out of white pine and is approximately 12 inches by 10 inches in size. If you guys are interested in following along, you can. You can go to my website and you can download the pattern or design for free. Also, within the description below, I'll have a list of the tools and equipment that I use to create this project. So with that being said, let's get carving. Outline the areas of the sky where it meets the design, and then I'm going to follow that up with my gouge to clean it up, and I'm going to do a taper then from there into the design. This section here where the cabin touches the sky, I'm gonna give myself a little wiggle room. I'm not gonna get right up to the line. I'm probably gonna give myself at least probably a 1/16 of an inch or so, so then I know I'm not gonna nick it or anything, because I'm gonna have to follow up with a bench chisel to get that nice and crisp, clean, straight line. So after that's done, I'm going to follow that up with tapering cuts with my gouge. Now this part you will have to be a little bit careful as you're doing these cuts right near the cabin, because if you go in too hard and you plunge into the side of the cabin, then you're gonna have, I guess, little plunge cuts that you're not gonna want, and it's really difficult to remove those if you went super deep. So just be careful and mindful of that as you carve along the edge of the cabin here. Just be careful there around the tips of the pine trees as well. You can pretty easily break those tips, so just use caution around those as well. All right, so I'm at about a 1/4 inch depth there in that areas that I cut. So I'm probably going to go a little bit deeper, maybe do one more pass with the Dremel, and then following up again with my gouge with the tapering cuts. So I'll probably I don't know, like I'm obviously keeping this shallow relief, but I think I'm gonna try to get down to maybe a 1/2 inch along this edge where I've been working here, because that's gonna probably give me the most depth to be able to, I guess, incorporate everything together. So now I'm going to just follow that up again with my gouge to complete those tapering cuts. Now your taper doesn't have to be perfect, but generally that's the goal, is just give it a nice gradual taper. You don't necessarily want any super obvious high spots or low spots. So I've roughed in that taper there now, and I'm going to clean it up now just a little bit. I'm not going to get it perfectly fine-tuned, but I'm going to clean it up with a shallower gouge. That's just going to kind of simmer down the gouge strokes and make it a little bit more flat. So this area here is kind of tricky because I guess it's a low spot there where it's difficult to kind of scoop your way back up without kind of splitting out some grain. So you kind of have to go back and forth, and then I always kind of follow it up with a cross cut. Kind of like that. You just kind of got to do your best. It's not going to be perfect, but so I got that section of the sky there down to about a half an inch, and I got it smoothed out pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that so far. Now I'm going to work on the left side here where the cabin meets the, I guess, the bushes. So it's going to be similar to the sky. I'm going to use my Dremel to do my stop cuts and get down to kind of my depths, but I have to be careful here where the cabin meets the bush, where the bush is in front of the cabin. I'm gonna not go super deep there because I don't want to have to make huge adjustments to the cabin when that comes later. So I'm probably gonna go almost as shallow as I can. All I need to do is establish that the bushes are in front of the cabin. Where the cabin meets the bush in the back, that doesn't necessarily matter. All I have to make sure is to not push that bush to the sky layer. Basically as deep as I can, but not as deep to where it's to the depth of the sky. I chipped that out a little bit, but whatever, not a huge deal. Bushes can be very easily adjusted and changed, but the cabin, obviously that's pretty standard. You can't really make any adjustments with that, so you have to be super careful not to chip anything out when you start working on the cabin. I'm just gonna keep tapering here. But again, this is super shallow. If I go deep here, then I'm gonna have to really be aggressive with my tapering across the entire front of the cabin, and I just do not want to do that. I want to do as little tapering as possible with the cabin, so then I maintain the drawing. So that's why I'm going very shallow here, only establishing that the bush is in front of the cabin. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my bench chisel, I'm gonna go right up against the line along the cabin roof and make those stop cuts to basically finalize the outline of the cabin on the left side there. So I'm just gonna go right up on that line. And just kind of rock back and forth and that. And I'm just kind of establishing the first cut. I'm not going all the way down to my deepest point. And it helps to kind of stay in the cut, if that makes sense. Like the back end of the chisel here, I'm just kind of keeping it right in the cut to, I guess, keep that going, if that makes sense. I'm not taking it out and readdressing the line. Okay. With shallow relief, it's not as important to go perfectly straight down, but as you get more into deep relief or medium relief, like that's super important to maintain the, I guess, integrity of the roof, because if you end up tapering, like almost undercutting, then as you shape the roof later, it's going to become skewed in one way or another, so you have to make sure you're going as straight down as you can. you gotta kind of clean it up there, that's fine. Just to see what you're doing. Okay, I'm gonna take my number 212 and try to clean that up. I've got pretty close to the sky background here, so. Okay, I'll do another pass here, probably 1 or 2 more passes, and I'll have it cleaned up. Again, I'm being very careful around this tip because that's going to break very easy if I'm prying or picking at it too much. Just like that. I'm just going to finish up the bushes here now and outline with my Dremel, again, where the bushes meet the grass. And this is going to be very similar to the section where it meets the cabin. I'm going to be very shallow, again, probably 1/8 of an inch, because if I push really deep there, it's going to make a weird low spot there in the grass, and it's not going to look the greatest. I'm going to clean up the edges here later, but I'm just kind of giving it a rough in here now. I'm going to move on to the mountains now, and I'm going to basically do the same thing that I did with the bushes, except the mountains, they're again the furthest objects back in the design here. So I'm going to push the mountains as far back as I can until I get to the sky layer. So it's probably going to be, like I said, similar to the bushes, the deep bush on the left. It's going to be 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. So I'm going to just take my Dremel again, and I'm going to outline the right side of the cabin and then around the pine trees, as well as that brief shoreline there. And I'm going to have to be very careful around the tip of the roof on the lower end on the right. That's going to be a fairly tricky part. So I'm going to have to kind of be careful there. Again, now I'm just going to follow those cuts up with some tapering cuts. Now I kind of lost my line on those two spots in the mountains, but those are obviously really easy to carve back in. I'm going to take my V-gouge now and kind of readdress these lower sections of the mountain and kind of recarve in those lines that I had lost. Now I'm going to take my shallower gouge and kind of clean up those gouge strokes and make them a little less aggressive. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to transition to my smaller gouge here to get in that tight spot. Now with my bench chisel, I'm going to clean up the right side of the cabin and make those final stop cuts establishing the final roof line. Now as you get down to your final depths here, now is a good time to kind of clean up any nicks or any imperfections there along the edge. I can see a pretty specific line when I was making the Dremel cut on my second pass, so I'm going to spend a little time and clean that up as well. So this tight section here, I'm gonna have to be very careful, but I'm gonna try to address it the same way, just vertical stop cuts, but I'm obviously not gonna use my large bench chisel. I've got actually a smaller one that will work great. It's only, I think it's only 5 millimeters wide. So it's probably as good as I'm gonna get it with my gouge. But what I'll probably do at some point, probably not right now, but at some point I can clean it up with my Dremel.